This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and welcome to This Week in FCPA, episode 38 for the week ending February 3, 2017, the M&M edition. In this episode, Jay Rosen and I report on the record-breaking month of January 2017 for FCPA enforcement actions. We ask about hunting trips in the great state of Texas and in the Kingdom of Sweden. We take a look at a couple of developments from Volkswagen, where their former CEO, Martin Winterkorn, appears to have known all along about the emissions testing fraud, and consider the departure of their CCO and what it might mean for their compliance program going forward. We talk about episode 6 of Everything Compliance and how we break down the Rolls-Royce global anti-corruption enforcement action. I give some thoughts on my February podcast series of 1 month to a better board from the compliance perspective. We give our Super Bowl predictions, and Jay gives us a taste of his Jay Rosen Weekend Report, which will be out tomorrow on LinkedIn. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening to This Week in FCPA. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and welcome to episode 38 of This Week in FCPA for the week ending February 3rd, 2017, the M&M edition. As always, I'm joined by my cohort, Mr. Translations himself, Jay Rosen. Jay, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. And for all you listeners, the M&M edition is in honor of my twin daughters, Millie and Michaela, who turned 9 years old this morning. And their birthday usually coincides with the Super Bowl. And when they were born in 2008, that was the first Patriots loss to the Giants. So Tom wanted to call the episode the Super Bowl episode, but I said that M&M trumped the Super Bowl any day.
And I have to agree. So we will have to figure out a way to honor the girls throughout this edition. And we will give our Super Bowl predictions at the end of this episode. But, Jay, we had a kind of an interesting week. So why don't we just hop right into it?
Sure. In terms of what we saw, we were able to close the books on the month of January. And courtesy of Dick Gasson and his group, what we saw this month, just to kind of go on a high level, and then we can dive in, as we saw a resolution with Mondelez International, and that had been a long simmering investigation about successor liability. We saw Zimmer Biomet, and that was a case poster child for recidivism. I'm not really familiar with the Sociedad Química y Minera de Chile, but I'm sure you can go into that. Rolls-Royce, we've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks, and we have a Everything Compliance podcast going out. Then we have Orthofix, and then we have Las Vegas Sands. So once again, a real potpourri of consumer goods, medical devices, airplane industry, and the gambling industry. So a lot of movement for the first month of January. Is there anything there, Tom, that really is salient and jumps out to you for discussion?
Well, Dick pointed out that there was over $256 million in fines and penalties in the month of January. I read somewhere that between December 20 and January 20, when the new administration took power, there was as much FCPA activity as was in all of 2016. So pretty amazing close to the end. Obviously, you raised the question of what would happen at the end, and no one really foresaw what would close out the end of the Obama administration in terms of FCPA settlements. But we still have some big ones out there. A couple of things that really stood out with for me, and you really touched on Mondelez. Mondelez, I guess you could take the road to Mandalay, but if you wanted to have chocolate in India, you have to go to Mondelez. You had successor liability, and you had successor liability in a very interesting way. We had recidivism with Zimmer Biomet and Orthofix. We had the completion of the Sands case, And then we have the Rolls-Royce, which we've touched upon in this podcast, and we did have a complete 1 hour everything compliance podcast out on Rolls-Royce. That is out on my site, the FCPA, www.fcpacompliancereport.com. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. We've collected all of our writings about Rolls-Royce in that podcast show notes. But we had the two individuals from OXIF who were charged civilly. So that's always interesting when we get civil charges. We had Michael Cohen and Zanya Barros, both from, I believe, OXIF London, but alleged to have run the bribery schemes in Africa. So a busiest January ever, and certainly the one for the books that will continue. I am less sanguine than you about the shoe dropping, but things may slow down. But Dan Kahn's still heading up the 20-person FCPA unit. The FBI investigative group is still there. And, we've got a law and order attorney general who's saying, tee it up, baby, let's go to trial. So all could be very interesting going forward.
Good stuff. I think also, I can't remember the attorney's name, but the last official attorney was hired for the FCPA unit. And I think from this point forward, there's a freeze on hiring. So, again, we've seen the FBI task force triple in the last couple of years and open up new outposts. So I think, there still is a lot in the hopper. There's a lot that's going to come through. And one of the stories that we have this week is that Panasonic Avionics, located here in Southern California, has said that they're getting close to a resolution. And I'm wondering, if this is, again, falling in the wake of, what happened with Rolls-Royce, and if that is giving any indication to the marketplace on what type of terms they may receive in the settlement.
Well, I think there is information, Jay, about the terms of settlement in the marketplace. I'm not sure I would point to Rolls-Royce, because I would point back to the pilot program and what we saw last summer with a series of cases where clear credit was given for self-disclosure, cooperation during the investigation, and then remediation throughout, and, of course, profit disgorgement. We had declinations, we had NPAs, we had significant discounts up to 50%. So I think the marketplace has a very good sense of what the department will put on the table if you meet those criteria. So I would think that we will continue to see a fair number of settlements going forward, because I think there's more certainty for corporations in this.
Gotcha. So why don't you want to talk about the commonality between the Nordic countries and Texas?
Absolutely. So red meat, red state Texas, run by rootin' tootin' gun totin' governor Greg Abbott, and the country of Sweden have a lot more in common than you might think, Jay. Recognizing that, you bi-coastal people who just bop back and forth between New England and Los Angeles and don't ever stop and see us in the heartland. We do thing in Texas called hunting, and it's generally called deer hunting, but in Sweden they have elk hunting. And it's a well-honored tradition in both countries. Texas, although we are titularly a state, we are, of course, the Republic of Texas. So in the Republic of Texas and Sweden, hunting is a tradition. And I was very interested to see that a Swedish company is in trouble for having hosted hunting trips. And that actually comes up not unoften or not unusually in the great state of Texas, because hosted hunting trips are pretty well known, pretty big business, and certainly a business boondoggle that's been going on at least since my grandfather's day, back in the 30s and 40s, probably before that. So in Sweden, though, a corporation CEO took out a minister of finance, I believe, in the Swedish government. The hosted fee for the hunting trip came in at just over $770. Hunting trips in Texas are multi-thousands of dollars, certainly four figures and sometimes five figures, depending on the hunting camp. And the allegations in Sweden were that this was tantamount to paying a bribe. And so it really brings up an interesting question, particularly around even to Sunday for the Super Bowl. Can you entertain at a sporting event? And if you consider hunting a sporting event, can you entertain around a hunting event? Clearly, you're going to engender goodwill. Clearly, you're going to have the chance to communicate, engage in business discussions, engage in generating that kind of relationship you want to have with a supplier customer or any business relationship. So an interesting parallel in countries and states that you might not normally associate together.
So one question, one comment. Since you're in the Republic of Texas, I would assume that that's rifle hunting. Is that correct?
Well, you can do rifle hunting. You can do pistol hunting, although that's less common, and you can do bow hunting. And believe it or not, there are people that do spear hunting. So it can be all types of hunting, but typically with a deer, you use a rifle, so you would have the ability to shoot at distance.
Okay, because in New Hampshire, where I hail from, I am familiar with bow hunting. There was a guy who used to work with at my dad's shoe store who was a pretty avid bow hunter. And that seems to, you can do that from a distance too, and there's a certain skill level involved. Switching over to your question about, are you allowed to take a client to the Super Bowl or, it seems that a lot of our focus and what may be very myopic on some chief compliance programs and officers' perspective is when so much attention is given to travel and gifts and entertainment, that really may be an improper use of your resources, because if you're spending all your time trying to ding T&Es and you're not looking at other potential problem areas within your business, I think this, in certain situations allows, corrupt activities really to gain a foothold and become a cancer in your organization. So, any thoughts on, I know you wrote a blog this week about doing risk-based analysis. How high up should companies place the T&E risk, and where should they really be focusing their efforts?
That's a great question. And 2 or 3 years ago, Jay, I would have said it's such a low-hanging fruit that everyone has dealt with it, and that has dropped it down the risk ranking scale. But we've seen multiple enforcement actions over the past year, up and through some that we named in January that were resolved, where gifts, travel, and entertainment continues to be a bugaboo, and companies need to have a policy and procedure, but more importantly, a control in place, and then monitor that control. And if you have those in place, you might be able to drop the risk. But simply because having the policy and procedures and the forms and monitoring that, you can have nefarious conduct by billing it to something other than gifts, travel, and entertainment, and the compliance officer might not have visibility of it. So you have to have a broad ability to monitor within your organization. It would seem to be a relatively straightforward and easy task, but it is still giving grief to companies so that they need to test their expense system to see if there are any untoward expenses or expenses that are frankly out of line. And I can't quite understand why companies wouldn't do that, but we continue to see that companies trip up over that.
Great. Thanks for opining on that. Super Bowl yet, or do you want to do a little bit more about a little bit more info about everything compliance?
Well, just a few more things. Certainly, everything compliance. What we tried to do there was break down into our spheres of interest, different topics and different ways to look at it. So Jonathan Armstrong took a look at it from the UK DPA perspective. Jay took a look at it from the perspective of not only the settling documents, but what companies might learn, or rather companies who do business with Rolls-Royce or companies who do business in competition with Rolls-Royce might do with the information that came out in the Rolls-Royce settlement and what they need to do to protect themselves now. Mike Volkov, I thought, had some really interesting ideas around the lawyering that went on by Rolls-Royce, specifically bringing in not Lord Gray, Lord Gold, rather, to be the investigator and kind of ongoing monitor.
Lords, huh?
So, and then Matt Kelly kind of brought it all together to bring us home. So we brought all our unique perspectives. We laid out all of the various writings. We've all written on it fairly extensively. So if you're interested in this case and interested in the facts, the bribery schemes, what lessons what lessons are to be learned from a wide variety of our individual perspectives, check out the Everything Compliance podcast. We really lay it out for you in a way that I don't think anyone else has done.
I think one breaking thing that maybe didn't make our list, but I think since you are Houston, you might be able to give us some insight on it, is there is a specific part of Dodd-Frank that requires more transparent reporting on the side of energy and extractive industry. And I believe the Congress is in the midst of striking down this part of Dodd-Frank. Any thoughts on that from Houston?
So that is something that has really been a craw in the energy companies' hairs. So it doesn't surprise me that this is something that they would want to do, and the House will do that. For the bedwetters out there in the compliance community, do not worry. This has nothing to do with the FCPA. It's Dodd-Frank. It would certainly help transparency, but it will not change FCPA enforcement resolutions or FCPA compliance one iota. It does provide less sunshine and less transparency, and I think probably putting things in the shadows and in the clouds is a direction that the Trump administration wants to go. So they have done that.
Any thoughts on whether it was a potential quid pro quo for the new Secretary of State?
I don't think it had anything to do with the new Secretary of State. Something the energy industry wanted, and they've got it, and it's a way they can say they are cutting back on Dodd-Frank quickly, efficiently, and done.
Great, thank you.
So one thing I think we ought to bring up, though, Jay, is it's not Wells Fargo. Volkswagen, because they had some fairly untoward information come out even after they announced their final component of their U.S. settlement. The first one was, it turns out, not unsurprisingly, that the former CEO, Martin Winterkorn, knew about this well before he claimed he knew about it. The second thing is the CCO left after 1 year on the job. And whenever a CCO leaves in these circumstances, it clearly negatively is a negative optic for the company. We don't know a precise reason why she left, other than disagreement on the role of compliance going forward. But frankly, that's sort of enough. You would consider, you might think that VW wanted to clean up their act, but or at least have top level CCO. They brought a woman in from Daimler who had gone through lots of work and compliance wars there, and she has now left the company. So where that leaves the resolution and remediation going forward is an open question.
Certainly is, and it just that thing I think is a rabbit hole, and we're going to continue to go deeper and deeper down it.
So, Jay, there is one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit before we get to the Super Bowl. I am doing a 1 month series this month, podcast series on 1 month to a better board. It is to make your board make your board better in your compliance program, make it more effective, both in the terms of the management, the oversight of your compliance program, and how the board would fulfill its obligations, both under the U.S. sentencing guidelines and the FCPA guidance, and indeed even Delaware case law requiring the board's obligations around compliance. So if you're interested in how to make your board a more and better part of your compliance program, I hope you will check out my 1 month podcast series in February. I've got some text accompanying each podcast. So at the end of the month, you'll have a pretty good summary of things that you can suggest to your board, things that your board can do, things that your board can engage in terms of oversight of your compliance program. And it should be a good resource for the compliance practitioner going forward.
And this is a great series. If you hadn't had a chance to check it out yet, they're, really bite-sized, very targeted information on, specific areas that apply to this subject. And if give yourself the 1 month and take a little bite every day, I'm sure it'll pay off. Tom, what's the best way to sign up? Is it iTunes, or how would you recommend for the technocrat out there, the best way for them to be able to get your monthly series?
Sure. Really, it's the manner or method of delivery that's most convenient for you. So if you listen to podcasts on your iPhone, which I do, listen to me on iTunes. If you're at your computer, you can check out my website, which once again is www.fcpacompliancereport.com. And it's a variety of delivery mechanisms. It's also on YouTube. If you want to see it via YouTube, now it's just audio only, so you'll only see my logo up there. There's no video of Tom Fox or the board getting better in front of you, but there's a variety of distribution channels, so check out the one that's most convenient for you.
Tom, I don't know if you ever do any fine dining here, but M&M occasionally get their Domino's pizza. And one of the things they love about Domino's is they have this little animated graphic, and it shows a chef who's like making your pizza dough and putting it in the oven, and when it comes out in the car. And they used to literally watch the laptop because they thought the pizza was being made. So maybe you could come up with some kind of thing about how the board is improving over those 30 days. I know M&M would be interested in it.
We'll consider it.
All right. So, I explained why we went with the M&M edition versus the Super Bowl edition, but I know the Super Bowl is on many people's minds. Mine from a potential perspective of Patriots' vindication against Darth Vader himself. I don't know if we have a sound effect, but Roger Goodell. And thank you. So I really kind of see this as an opportunity for Tom Brady really to cement his status as somebody winning 5 Super Bowls. And there would be 2 distinct eras where he won them in the early 2000s and now in the middle of the teens. The other thing is that, these Super Bowls, sometimes they can be really tight, and New England's 5 previous Super Bowls the 4 that they won were all by 3 points or less. So I think the margin of error is going to be very thin. It's going to be the highest scoring offense against the best, non-scoring defense. So it's strength against strength. And, I think the odds makers, if anybody looks at that stuff, you get 3 points for basically being the home team. And even though I guess we are the home team because it's an AFC stadium, but I look for it to be a real battle of the wits. And one thing that augurs against New England is that in all 5 of Brady's previous Super Bowl appearances, they have not scored in the first half, or actually maybe the first quarter. So I really think besides Belichick trying to take away Julio Jones, there are a lot of other weapons that Atlanta has. So it's going to be a squeaker from my perspective, but I still got to be a shout ahead and go with Tom and watch him accept that Lombardi Award from Commissioner Goodell.
So I see things a little bit differently, Jay. I see not a close game. I don't think the Atlanta defense is going to have an answer for Mr. Brady, or perhaps more appropriately, I think Mr. Brady will have an answer for whatever Atlanta may throw at them. Up until the playoffs, Atlanta was not a heavily blitzing team. They've changed that in the playoffs. And certainly if you can put pressure on Brady, it's a plus. But he is the best at determining what your blitz is going to be and then counteracting your scheme literally at the line of scrimmage. So I'm thinking that, and I don't think Atlanta has an answer for New England's offense. The Atlanta offense is almost one for the record books, so we could have a very high-scoring game. But I think Bill Belichick has shown that he is one of the true master coaches. One of the certainly top 10, maybe top 5 of all time. And he will come up with some defensive schemes that will slow down the Atlanta offense enough for New England to have more than an eke-out win. So I'm not predicting a blowout, but I'm not predicting a 3-point game either. I think it's New England. So, Jay, now we've given our Super Bowl predictions, can you give our listeners a hint of the Jay Rosen Weekend Report?
Sure. So this week there was a lot that happened with regard to the immigration ban. Former Assistant Attorney General, come on, help me. Sally Yates made a Pyrrhic stand against the Trump administration. She was summarily dismissed, and I kind of posted a couple articles, not that I penned, but that I took from the press about, the Saturday Night Massacre and things that have happened past in the history. And a lot of the things that I try to post are just things that are of interest, I think, to people in the ethics and compliance in the FCPA community. And a couple of my followers took issue with the fact and said that I was being partisan and I wasn't really representing things with an even hand. So I think along that lines, this weekend's blog is going to take a look at where does the line begin with FCPA ethics and compliance, and where does it end with politics? And in a certain extent, I don't believe they're mutually exclusive, and I think they exist on the same continuum. So that's what I'm going to explore in my weekend read, in between Eminem's birthday, my mom's birthday, and the Super Bowl. But I promise to get that out to y'all.
Well, we'll definitely looking forward to that. Jay, I guess I would say good luck to both our teams, since we're both pulling for the Patriots. And have a great time at the Eminem 9th birthday celebration.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And thanks to everyone out there for listening. We appreciate you spending your time with us. And this was the week in FCPA that was for the week ending February 3rd, Eminem's 9th birthday.